is Pat Brown. Pat's here from one of our sponsors, Concept2. What's interesting about Pat is Pat came as an assistant coach here and then moved on to where?
University of Central Oklahoma.
Central Oklahoma.
Tied into High Performance Center down there.
Right, and then now up at Concept2. Right, and I'll let Pat speak more specifically about that. I'll just say, as somebody that knows a little bit about rigging, this tends to be the question I get the most. Usually a question at least once a week, every other week on email, what oar should I row? What should I, I understand. Because Pat's here as sponsor, we're not saying Concept2 is better than anyone else's oars. We're not saying that at all. There's great manufacturers of all sorts of different rowing equipment out there. Croker makes great oars, and there's just a wide spectrum of them. So we're not saying one's better than the other. We tend to use Concept2s for the main reason that we're really comfortable with them and we just know them well. But as I said, there's other great manufacturers of oars out there. So please don't take this as an endorsement of just them. But they are very, very, very good. But this is a question I get, what should I row? And Pat's going to shed some light on that. Right? Okay, without further ado, Pat Brown.
All right, thanks to Mike for having me back. It's nice to sort of see Rowing Talks come together because Mike always talked about coaching education and what he could do to better educate new coaches. When I was here, he did a horrible job with me, and so it's nice to see that he's trying to redeem himself by holding this event. But to tie in what he said, I agree. I really tried to cater this to how to pick the right oar, not how to pick the best Concept2 oar. So, and I also agree that there are a lot of great products out there, whether it's Concept2, Croker, Bracha, Dreyer. So really I try and focus on the features of the oar and how those features are going to play a part when you're selecting the oar, rather than just talk about Concept2 oars. All right, so first and foremost, the most important thing to understand is where are the gains and losses in your energy. And the biggest one is going to be your athletes. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all coaches. That's why we all run programs, because the focus is going to be on what we're doing with our athletes to prepare them to take every single stroke. Second to that is what blade you are using. Not so much what oar you're using, but what blade you're using, because that's the part of the oar that interacts with the water. And then the third most important is going to be what boat you're using. I often, in the position I'm at Concept2, find that people want to spend 95% of their energy talking about the blade in the boat. And they worry about rigging and the blade in the boat, and they spend so much time worrying about that. And really, you should be the opposite. It should be find out what works for you, stick with it, experiment a little from time to time, spend 95% of your energy worrying about your athletes. And that's where you're going to have, especially at the high school level, that's where you're going to have the biggest gains and losses in energy and efficiency. So when you do decide it's time to get some new oars, what are the things that you need to know? What should you be asking yourself before you pick up the phone to place an order? One, why do you want what you want? Why are you looking for the oar that you're looking for? What are you hoping to get out of it? Who are you? What is your program? Are you a new novice program? Or are you sending guys to the junior national team and you're winning Stokesbury or youth nationals? So which program are you? And then lastly, what oar features are important and how do those features help your program? And we'll get into that towards the end. But you should be looking at the features of the oar that are going to most benefit the efficiency for your athletes. So why do you want what you want? What are your priorities? Okay? Most people call and they say, I want the fastest oar. Well, the fastest oar doesn't exist. Okay? If it did, everyone would use it and there would be no competition. Okay? So there is no such thing as the fastest oar. What I want you to have from a takeaway is, again, figure out what type of program you're running, what style of coaching that you teach, and then find the oar that best matches that style. So, are you trying to buy equipment for a startup program? Are you looking for inexpensive equipment? Are you limited by budget? Are you looking to create some consistency in your boathouse? Do you walk in your boathouse now and you have 100 different oars rigged at 100 different lengths, and you're just trying to tie everything in and button it down so that you can really focus on 4, 5, or 6 boats, but have some continuity in what they're rowing? Or are you on the higher end of the spectrum? Are you looking for that little bit of competitive edge? Do you have the higher caliber athlete and you want to really dial it in and figure out the best way to just eke out a little bit more? The other thing you have to do is figure out who you are, okay? Living in reality will help you when you are looking to purchase oars, okay? Is this your team? This is the GB Junior National team. These guys are at the top of their class for their age group, okay? They're strong, they're dialed in, their rigging is going to be important, their oars are going to be important, and more importantly, you could probably ask these athletes for feedback, and they're going to be able to give you a well-educated answer. Or is this your team, okay? If this is your team, you're going to get a much different response. And more often than not, I talk to coaches who coach this, but they act like they're coaching this, okay? All right? And the needs of this program are drastically different than the needs for this program. So be realistic about what you're looking for. All right, how well is your equipment cared for? High school coaches, a lot of you probably have full-time jobs. You drive right from work to the boathouse. You get out, you try and get the most you can out of an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you don't necessarily have the time to worry about where your equipment's stored, how it's cleaned, or how it's maintained. You do the best of your ability, but especially in a boathouse where equipment is being shared by a lot of different people, this should be a factor when you select equipment. Oars that are stored outside might be different than oars that are stored inside. Oars that are used by a lot of different groups might be different than oars if you know you're the only boat that's using them. Okay? What type of water do you row on? Crystal clear, calm water with no current, fresh water. You get out there every day, it's beautiful and serene. Or are you rowing in the ocean? All right? Salt water, debris, big currents, lots of traffic, lots of bridges. These are all things that you want to pay attention to when you're ordering oars. And then the most important thing, and this really trumps everything else that I've listed so far, what is your loading profile? What style of coaching do you teach your athletes? Because this is really where you're going to try and match a blade with the style of coaching that you teach. So here are 4 distinct styles of coaching. These are power curves, the black line being the overall average of your power curve. The Concept2 ergs give you a power curve when you're rowing on them. The top left, the DDR style, that's a style that emphasizes being most efficient at the mid to second half of the drive. And you can see when they break down legs, trunks, and arms that there's not one that's particularly higher than the others. It's sort of a melding of all 3 body parts. As you go through the different styles, the opposite of that, the Grinko style down on the bottom right, all right, emphasis on leg drive. The green line goes up, and then it's quick to fall down into the trunk and arms. So are you someone who teaches heavy on the middle and into the finish, or heavy on the front end and then just hang on into the finish and get it out of the water? Or are you a variation of that through? This is going to be really important when you're selecting oars, knowing what style of coaching you teach and what style you emphasize. Okay? So we'll get back to that in a second. Here are the features of the oars. Here are the features of the oars that you should be paying attention to in order of importance when you're looking to select oars and purchase them. Again, this is true whether you're ordering our oars or any of our competitors, all right? So I'm not vouching for one or the other, but these are the things you want to pay attention to. First and foremost, the blade, all right? Second is going to be oar length, which is tied into rigging. Third is going to be the shaft, and then fourth, and it really shouldn't even be on the list, is grip, because grip really is negligible. It's just something for your athletes to complain about. Okay. So before we talk about the blade, let's get something clear. This is not a rowing stroke. Your boat does not stay stationary as you pull your blade through the water. That is not the case. Instead, your boat moves from point A to point B, and as your blade enters the water, it stays and makes a teardrop shape, the white being the blade and the purple being the shaft. And this is a picture that's taken evenly over time, and so the bigger spaces between the shaft at the handle means that the handle is moving faster. So what you're looking at is a slower rotation in the first half of the drive and a faster rotation in the second half. And when I talk about rotation, what I'm talking about is the rotation of the blade in that teardrop shape. So as we go through this, if I talk about rotation, that's what I'm talking about. What you will see from your athletes is what's happening with their handle speed. Faster rotation means a less efficient blade, which means a faster handle speed. Slower rotation means the blade's holding water better, and you're going to have a more efficient or a slower handle speed as the blade's more efficient, okay? So blades, simple rule. A blade with a larger surface area will resist slippage perpendicular to its face, which just means a heavier load, okay? So on the other end of that, a smaller blade will resist less. A flatter blade will generate a heavier load with slower rotation early in the drive, and a blade with a deeper hook will generate a heavier load with slower rotation at the finish. So again, these are features that, depending on what style you teach, are going to play a part in what blade you select. A tapered edge will also allow for a faster rotation into the finish. So do you have a square edge blade or a tapered edge blade? Square edge is going to hold the water better into the finish. Tapered edge will rotate faster in the finish. So we go back to our loading profile. If you're in the top right corner, a recommendation would be a smaller surface area with greater hook and an uncut edge. And what that's going to do is create a blade that's going to hold the water better when you are at the peak of your power curve if you row with that style. And that's the takeaway here. You are trying to find a blade that is most efficient when you have your athletes at their highest power application. If you're in the bottom right, a larger surface area, a flatter blade, and a tapered edge, it will hold water better in the first half of the drive and rotate quicker and slip a little more when you're engaging and where you're putting less emphasis on your trunk and arms. You're not going to be able to carry that heavy load. And so those features that hold the water early in the drive become negligible in the second half of the drive, and they'll follow that loading profile. And then you have everything in between. So again, the takeaway here is matching a blade with a loading profile. Okay, oar length. And I'm not going to get too much into overall rigging, but I will give you some short takeaways here. A general rule of thumb is a more efficient blade requires a shorter oar length. Okay? Typical ranges for high school crews, and this is where I can only talk about the Concept2 blades, but our most efficient blade is the Fat 2. We offer blades in 5-centimeter ranges, and we see with the Fat 2, our most efficient blade, 362 to 372 on the sweep side. I apologize, I didn't list sculls. And that, I know that's a big range, but I can't give you, people always want a number. What should I rig my oars at? What should I rig my oars at? We can't give you a number because I'm not the coach of your crew, all right? So you need to be aware of what your crew is capable of and then try and come up with the best rigging that's best going to fit your program. So for a more efficient blade, 362 to 372 is in the realm of normal. And for a big blade or a least efficient blade, or if you're buying blades from a competitor and they have a smaller surface area, you have the ability to go a little bit longer. 367 to 378 is not uncommon lengths to find. And again, these lengths are based on feedback from the field that we collect, and they're only one part of an oar rigger rower setup. So like I said, these lengths that I'm suggesting are only relevant if you know what someone's spread is and what someone's inboard is, or if you know what your spread is and your inboard is. So if someone says to you, oh, I row my oars at 380, that doesn't mean anything if you don't know what the rest of their setup is. Okay? Talk, test, and retest, and buy Mike's book and have him sign it before you leave. Okay? So, but it's important when you're at regattas or if you have friends who are in this room, you should be talking to everyone you can and asking what their rating numbers are. And if they don't tell you, that's their problem, not yours, but you should continue to ask. You should test it on the water yourself with your program and then retest it. Try it again. Get out there, experiment with the rigging, and when you do experiment with the rigging, try and only change one thing at a time. Don't change your inboard and your spread and your overall length and your blade and then go out and test it. Make small changes in your spread, test it over a week. Make small changes in your inboard, test it over a week. Demo a new set of blades and keep everything the same. Test it and then change it and test it again. And again, I would recommend that you talk to everyone. You call Concept2, you can talk to me. Call Croker, call Dreyer, see what they're saying. Call the boat manufacturers, see what they say about rigging. That's the only way you're going to get the information you need to make the best decision for your program. So shaft construction and flex. And when we talk about construction, the things that are going to come into play are going to be the overall weight, the weight in hands or the swing weight, and the durability of the oar. Okay? Lower swing weight, for those who might not be familiar with the term, is the weight of the oar is oriented on the outside of the oar lock, so there is a weight in hands as you're rowing. If you have a lower swing weight, there's two things that's going to happen. One, you're going to spend less energy at the turnaround at both the catch and the finish, which is great. The con to that is you're also going to have a loss of balance. Think about it as like a tightrope walker. A tightrope walker carrying a long pole with weighted ends is going to have a lot easier time balancing on a tightrope than someone who's carrying, a toothpick. They don't have that outside weight. So if you have novice junior boys or girls who are going out in singles for the first time ever, this may be a factor. You might want to give them a little bit longer, more weighted oar and worry less about what they're feeling in their hands to give them the opportunity for success as far as balancing and setting up their boat. So again, Concept 2, we offer three types of construction. We have our standard ultralight, which I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with. We offer a low-I and a skinny. So the standard ultralight, it's durable, it lasts a long time. It's probably what 90% of people in the U.S. use, and even with Croker and Dreyer, they have a similar construction to our ultralight. So that's a pretty common construction out in the field. Low-I is a low inertia makeup, so it's a much lighter weight in hands, but it uses less carbon fiber, so it's not as durable. It's not an oar I would recommend you store out in the sun, and so low-I could be an option for your program, but again, looking back at all the other parts of your program, it might be a good fit for some and not another. The skinny oar, which is our newest oar, without getting into too much detail about the skinny, it's the same amount of material as the ultralight, but it has some of the swing weight features of a low-I. It deflects the same. People have this impression it's going to bend similar to a pole vault, but it deflects the same. Medium skinny and a medium ultralight deflect the same under the same amount of pressure. So it's not as if you're going to row with the skinny and you take a stroke and it bends way up and then you finish and sit there and it sends you. Okay, that's not the case. And so there's some features there, and I actually have some out in the hall. If you have questions after and you want to get more in depth about the shaft, we can talk about it after the conference. Okay, flex, stiff, medium, soft, and extra soft, with extra soft only being offered on the skinny. So shorter oars feel stiffer and should be offset with a softer flex, meaning if you are making the switch from or at least a less efficient blade to a more efficient blade, and you have to rig it shorter, that now is going to feel stiffer, and you might also want to consider dropping in a flex. Over the past 15 years in the field research that we've done, we are finding that more and more people are going from a stiff and medium to a soft and now extra soft flex. And we attribute that to more efficient blades and shorter rigging. And if you think about a stiff flex was really for people when oars first came out and they were rowing them at 380 with a Macon blade, they needed it to feel stiff because it was slipping through the water so much. So it's rare that we even take orders for stiff oars anymore. And just to put this in perspective, the Canadian Women's 8, they row Concept 2 with our Fat 2 blade, which is our most efficient blade. They do row it on a skinny shaft with an extra soft flex. Sometimes people get it in their minds that a stronger athlete needs a stronger flex in order for it to work. Canadian Women's 8 have continually, over the last 5 years, come in second behind the US Women's 8. So again, they're the second strongest group of women in the world, and they're rowing extra soft flex. So these are small changes between stiff and extra soft. It's not as if it's a benchmark for your team's strength. You know, a lot of people think they need to order the medium as some sort of statement of prowess, but that's not the case. Okay, and the thing about flex is that it changes the perceived load without losing any efficiency. The last thing about grip, there's only two things you can consider when you're ordering grip, is durability and feel. Again, thinking about how well you maintain your equipment, how well you take care of your equipment, what type of environment it's going to be used in. On one spectrum, plastic and rubber grips are going to far outlast foam and cellular grips. So if you store your stuff outside, if you're rowing salt water, if you have a lot of hands-on, if your team likes to tape their hands up, tape is notorious for tearing up cellular grips. All right, so you need to decide what's going to be good for one and good for another. And then the feel, just poll your athletes. If you're in a position where you can give them any grip they want, see what they want. Ask them what feels good, what don't you like. That's like the one thing athletes love to talk about. We have the oar box on display when we go to regattas, and all the juniors love to pick up the grips, and they're constantly touching them. It's like, you know. And no matter what we did, if we created 1,000 grip options, you'd still find people who were unhappy, and you're still going to have hands that look like this. There's nothing you can do about it, okay? So just try and make them comfortable. You guys are free to call me at any time at Concept 2. Some of the things I recommend, biorow.com, maxrigging.com, Mike's book, and Notes on Rowing by Mike Purser are all good supplementary information as far as rigging goes. Both Max Rigging and BioRow have rigging calculators where you can input what equipment you're using, what caliber crew you're rowing with, and it will generate some recommendations as far as where to start with your rigging. Any questions?
Come on.
Great.
Do you still have wooden handles available?
Yep, we make wooden handles in 3 sizes. We have just a thin, a medium, and a thick. Yep. But keep in mind, if you order a wooden handle, it's a fixed length. So you won't have that 5-centimeter option. Yeah.
Well, you can always make them shorter.
You can always make them shorter. That's right. That's right. You can always make them shorter.
Just measure twice.
Yep.
Anybody else? Anybody here have any problems with their oars in terms of maintenance, storing, anything like that outside of the selection? I would say that the one thing that we have found, just speaking as a college coach now, is that the athletes will gleam onto something, glob onto it, and just like, boom, they're there. We demoed a set of skinnies. We could not pry those out of their hands. They wanted to take them home just to make sure we didn't send them back. They would love the skinnies. And so we asked, well, why? Don't know, but we love the skinnies. You know, so we started, is it the grip? No, the same grip as the other boats. And it came down to they just felt it made them a better rower. And we really couldn't quantify why it did. There was no set thing that we did testing, and it came back to feel. So I just share that as somebody that's just gone through the selection process.
I'm just curious about infection and MRSA and that kind of thing, and what the recommendations are for coming in off the water, and
Yeah,
best ways for keeping clean.
Sure, it depends on the grip, but it could be something as simple as a bucket of water with bleach. 10-to-1 is usually a good ratio, and your athletes just have to dump it in the water before they hang their oars up. If you're at a
no drying,
just
dip
if it's now it depends on the grip. If you're using a rubber grip or our green grip, for example, I mean you can just dump that in. If you wanted to, you can scrub it, but dumping it in bleach water will kill anything. If you have our blue cellular foam, you might have to take a nylon brush to it, once a week to clean off any debris if you're really concerned about staph infection or anything like that.
The 2 things that we found is, one, bleach goes after 24 hours, it loses its potency. So you have to remix that bleach each time. Chris Alsop, if anybody wants to see it, Chris Alsop did a great talk last year about cleaning. It's up online. He's got information. The other thing is, in terms of preparing for a race or making it feel, especially bringing a little bit life back to the grip, not so slippery, we use Windex and a green scrubby. So we'll just take, how often do we do it? Once a week? Yeah, we just spray it with Windex. It's not a sterilization. It's just to get the oil off. Especially when you travel, kids are notorious for sunscreen. Let's row. It's like rats. Don't do that. But Windex and a green scrubby, just rinse it with water, and now it'll take a lot of the film off. Okay, Pat, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We greatly appreciate it.